Welcome to the American Operator Podcast, where small businesses are the heartbeat of America. I'm Joseph Cabrera, and we dive into the stories of owners and operators who build and keep our communities thriving. Whether you're new to business or already in the trenches, we'll share the hard-earned wisdom, triumphs, and challenges with running a business in this great country. Let's get to work. All right, team. I am stoked for this episode of American Operator. I am here in Richardson, Texas, just inside. We were talking about kind of actual geography of Dallas-Fort Worth, but in that general area with Tom Hough, like tough.
That's right.
Good to have you, man.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys making the trip up here, and excited to have a good conversation here today.
Yeah,
and hopefully help some people.
Oh, no doubt. And I mean, we've seen just kind of how you are with the community. Just walking in here, the energy was already, and I know we missed a class. I think y'all might have either just wrapped up or whatever. But just even with the folks that were just kind of around in the meeting your awesome wife, like all that stuff there is just really neat to just see that there are, let's just put it this way. You don't always walk into an environment where fitness happens and feel like, you kind of have a question mark about how it's going to be. So y'all built something special here, and we really appreciate the full tour. This is a lot bigger than, it's a great complex you're in, but then when you walk into this place, it just booms up.
Yeah, and we're just super proud of it, right? It's our baby, it's our child, and in order for anything in your life to be great, you have to go all in on something, right? And you can't go all in on all the things, right? We can't get what we call shiny object syndrome and bounce from thing to thing if we want something to be great and really cultivate it. It does require that energy, and I'm just so happy that we've built this. And it's like I mentioned to you when you walked in, it's always great when we have folks that walk in the door and say, well, this place just feels great. When at the end of the day, it's four walls, it's some paint, it's some weights, it's flooring. So to have that, for other people to recognize that, because I feel it, because I'm so prideful of this place, and I feel the energy, and we have sessions going on, and just all of the memories we've had in this place and built. It's just so rewarding when someone else can walk in the door and feel that. When at the end of the day, it's just a room. Right?
Yeah.
It's an empty space right now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and the right operator on this stuff can make, we see it all the time. You get these businesses with like a 30-year track record, killed it, profitable for 28 of the 30 years. They pass the baton to the next operator, absentee, negligent, not really give a hoot, maybe fine person, just not putting the energy behind it every single day, and then in 5 years they're bankrupt. And it's like, well, what just happened? Well, and then the opposite happens too. You get like a flailing business. You were actually sharing a story about a gym you were helping out, kind of on the fritz, and then all of a sudden just get a guy. I mean, really it starts there, get a guy or a gal who cares, and it ends up being half the recipe to success.
Yeah. The passion is where it's at, right? The profits are in the passion, and anything in your life that you're proud of, that you care about, it's gonna shine through, right? You can only fake it for so long until you're going to be the first one to figure yourself out. Like, my heart's not really in this, and it's hard to hide that. You can only hide that and live that lie or that falsehood for so long until other people are going to feel that too, right? Like, the moment you meet somebody, we all, even though we don't want to be, judge each other in life, we do. It's human nature, and you're going to judge someone on, is this person authentic? Are they real? Are they legit? Are they passionate? Can they help me, especially from a business perspective? Can this person solve my problem? And so it's needed. And the reason I'm so happy to connect with you is, and what you're working on here is, I see operators and business owners and really people just in life that they've just lost the spark, or they don't have the spark, or their life is moving in a direction where they're working on something, but the passion is just not there. And they're too afraid to change directions and go all in on something because they think too much time has gone past, or they're not going to be able to be successful. And, my encouragement, my mission in life is to help folks find that passion, whatever it is, even if it's not in their work life. There's other things in their life that they want to go after. And I just think about being, hopefully 105 years old on my deathbed. I don't want to have regrets, and I don't want anyone else to either, because we see it all the time with our grandparents or folks that are older. They all have the same advice, and they all have the same regrets, which is they wish they didn't spend so much time working on things that didn't serve them or things that didn't matter in their life, and they wish they had more time right? And more experiences.
Yeah. No, I think in what y'all are doing here is clear that that's like a one, not even a one degree removed from helping people do that. We've seen y'all session board to results board, and I know y'all are doing that franchise wide now through to your in creativity and and really understanding what the customer's about. But speaking of which, for folks who don't know Tom, just give us a little background on you, and then obviously this world of fitness has been your life for the better part of a decade. But just kind of walk us through that little bio for us.
Sure thing. Born and raised in Pennsylvania.
PA guy.
I'm an East Coast guy. Yes, just outside, about an hour outside of Philadelphia. Grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, middle school, high school, all this stuff, and had a standard life, gotten my fair share of trouble, and just had a fun upbringing. And then really where I started to recognize myself and things started to change was after high school and then going into college. I went to school for criminal justice. I thought I wanted to serve as a police officer. Just because, honestly, from like watching shows like Cops and like different television shows, I'm like, that could be interesting, but didn't have a good direction in my life. And so I went to school for criminal justice, and while I was in school, I saw a job posting for being a loss prevention agent, which is catching shoplifters, right? So I went and I applied, and I started working at Old Navy for a little bit. That's where I met my wife.
Was she working at Old Navy too?
She was working at Old Navy too.
I was like, well, maybe was she stealing something?
No, she wasn't. No, she was working there as well. And then I ended up working for a grocery store chain for a handful of years. And I was really good at it. Like I was really good at it. I won all kinds of awards. And then I worked for a retail store. I worked for Nordstrom and worked there. And my wife and I, were girlfriend at the time, we lived in Pennsylvania. She was in college. Then we moved to Colorado for a year. Her parents moved out there. She moved out there for a job. And then the big turning point, how we ended up here in Richardson, was we lived in Pennsylvania. I was working at the grocery store. Good job. She was in college. She graduated. She's going to get an internship working with her dad. So we pack up. I quit my job. We move across the country to Colorado. And we had visited a bunch over the 2-3 years while she was in college. Like, wow, it's going to be great. We're going to live out here. Like
this mountain town. Come on.
Okay. And this is just a good lesson in just, you never know where life is going to take you, and just to kind of play it out and just go with it, because you never know where these opportunities are going to come from. So we moved to Colorado. We're literally there for 1 week. Our moving truck wasn't even there with our stuff yet. My wife had just started this job with her dad. Actually, yeah, still girlfriend at the time. We weren't even engaged. They come home from work. We're there 1 week. They come home for lunch and said, hey, they walked in the door. They looked like they saw a ghost. I'm like, what's going on? They just told us that they're closing down this facility and giving us jobs in Richardson, Texas, right?
You're like, Richardson, Colorado?
Where's Richardson, Texas? Never thought about Texas other than, never thought we'd live there. So, of course, her dad's going to move down there. He's the breadwinner. Her mom's going to move down. So they moved down here to Texas. I actually stay in Colorado because I got a job at Nordstrom, and they wanted to put me in this manager training program, and I had to be at a store for a certain amount of time.
You're still in the loss prevention field?
Yes, in loss prevention. So they moved down here. I stay in Colorado. Huge, great learning lesson. When they move, I'm now completely by myself. And I had never had to rely on who I was without the support of like all my friends from high school and how I had grown up and everyone that know me. Now I have to go make friends by myself. And it was a great learning lesson. Very, very scary, but great learning lesson. They moved down here. I end up moving down at the end of the year and getting promoted to a store down here. So we made our life down here in Richardson, Texas. And then from there, I still worked in the security world. I was with Nordstrom for a while, and then I worked at a semiconductor company helping people get their security clearances. Here's the scary part of the story. I would go to these meetings, and if you're watching this right now and you're thinking about becoming an operator, there's some sort of passion inside of you, something that you want to go and do. I want you to really think about, there's two things you can think about: the fear or the possible success. So one of the scariest moments I would go to these quarterly meetings, and I was in charge of getting people their security clearance because we were a cleared defense contractor. We had classified documents that I was responsible for. I was reporting into this thing called the DSS, the Defensive Security Service, or they were the liaison of the government, where they had oversight over the companies because you had government property to make sure that they would come in and audit you. Are you keeping everything locked up? Does everyone have their clearances? Are you doing all the trainings? And I'd go to these quarterly meetings with these other guys from these other companies, these bigger defense contractors, and I'd look around, I'm like, is this what my life is gonna be?
Yeah.
I should not be the guy in charge of classified documents. I'm bored out of my mind. Like, I don't know anything about this stuff. I just kind of fell into it because I was in retail for a long time, and then I wanted a 9-to-5, and it was good benefits and a better, but I was like, I was like so afraid of what the rest of my life looked like. Meanwhile, when I worked at the grocery store, when I fell in love with fitness out of college, then when I worked at the grocery store, I'd be reading the magazines while I'm out looking for shoplifters and read Muscle and Fitness and all this stuff, and started working out and fell in love with fitness. And I'd always look how to become a personal trainer. So when I worked at the grocery store, when I worked at Nordstrom, when I was in this job, the final job, I would always go on like how to become a personal trainer. I'm like, man, I really want to do this. But now I'm 10 years into a career, right? And I'm like, how would I do this? Do it on the side? I want to own a business. I don't want to just be a trainer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I wanted something more. Because when I was a kid, my dad would always talk about owning a business, and it just always stuck with me. And then when I worked at like Domino's Pizza when I was 15, I remember asking the manager, how much does the dough cost?
Oh,
how
you
much
just kind of tick that way.
How much is the cheese?
Yeah.
How much does it cost to make? Okay, then we got to pay the driver, and my mind just always kind of worked that way. And I didn't recognize it at the time, but it just was always in the back of my mind. And so scared that this is what the rest of my life is going to look like. But at the same time, knowing that like this is what the rest of my life would look like. So point I'm making to our folks that are watching is I talk to a lot of folks that want to open a Fit Body Bootcamp. I have a position at HQ, and I'm able to talk to new owners. And the question that they get a lot is like, well, I'm a police officer, I'm whatever their job is, and I've been doing it for X amount of years, and I want to make this switch. I say, okay, so just take a step back and look. If you don't decide to open a franchise, okay, you know what the rest of your life looks like. Are you okay turning around at 80 and saying, hey, I was happy with what I did? If the answer is no, then make the shift.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to be in fitness, always wanted to own a business. And then it's a sad story, but it was August 31st, 2014. I got a phone call that my brother passed away. He was my only brother. He was just barely 33 years old at the time. Wow, man. I was 30. And so it just rocked my world. Went back home for the funeral, saw all the friends. It was terrible for my parents, just horrible, horrible situation. But that sparked just realizing that life is short. And it was sort of like a culmination of like me not being happy at work. On the surface, everything was fine. Making money, successful, whatever, benefits, had a house, just got married. But like I feel unfulfilled. And so that was the spark with the love and support from my wife, like, hey, babe, I think let me just go become certified. Let me kind of look into finding a business. So I went through my certification process. I started looking at how do you open a gym. I found Fit Body Bootcamp, and over the course of a 2-year period, worked at some other locations, learned the business side of things, and then here we are 10 years later, and 10-year overnight success. Right?
10-year overnight success.
So that, I mean, that's a bit of the backstory, but I think the learning lessons from that are, I felt like that was my career. I felt like we take on these identities, and so much of it is tied to the career that we have. So I felt like I was this like security thing. But you can change. I was, well into my 30s when I opened the gym, right? Like you can do it at any age. Don't feel stuck. And if there's this desire inside of you, you can always think worst case scenario. So me and my wife went through this when we were going through the process of thinking about opening the gym because it was a huge risk, right? I have no business experience, obviously financial risk. But I just always broke it down to worst case scenario. Okay, worst case scenario. We buy in, we open the gym, nobody signs up, and it's a disaster. Okay, we'll sell the house, we'll pay off the franchise, whatever, get out of the lease, we'll go live with your parents, and I'll go get a job again. That's not that bad, right?
Just go back to what we did.
Go back to what we did. And then I'd say the other piece of it is pay attention in your life, looking back on the skills that you developed or things that you were naturally good at that you didn't realize. When I said I was really good at catching shoplifters, what I mean is, I was really good at it, but it's because I didn't realize at the time I was a really good salesman. I was confident, and being able to stop somebody who just did something illegal, or sitting down with an employee who is stealing stuff and getting them to admit that to you takes a certain people skill that is, it can be taught. You can read a script, but like people have to kind of like you and trust you. And so looking back on that, that's why I was good at that. And then that translates into what we do here, because I'm passionate about it, and I have that spark. And I'd say the other piece of it is, don't let your shortcomings be your shortcomings. Use them as a superpower. So as a kid, I got in a lot of trouble. I was ADD, whatever you want to call it, right? But now looking at a business sense of that is like using that as your superpower, where it's like, I can be the fun and energetic guy and get people to follow me. I don't have to know all the X's and O's of the operator, like the SOPs and stuff. That's where my wife comes into play, which is why it's important to identify people that can help you out. So don't let your shortcomings, like, how can you turn them into superpowers? Did you have a crappy childhood? You can turn that into a superpower. There's not a person that I know that's successful that didn't go through something hard, right? My brother dying. I could let that label me for the rest of my life, and woe is me, right?
Be in a corner just drinking your way to death and being like, and you'd have a good reason to, or a reason, I would say, to
right?
do that.
So now I turn into something positive, right? We have a plaque of him up front. I'm able to celebrate it. It helps me heal when I'm able to share the story, right? People are able to connect with that, because every single person has lost somebody. But are you going to use that as your jumping off point to go do the thing that you want to do? Or are you just going to keep, going along in life? And so,
did someone help you kind of think about that differently? I'm actually fascinated. I always find it interesting when you look at trauma, hardship, suffering, and what it does. It can literally be the exact same thing, right? Let's think about one of the most tragic things that can happen to somebody, right? Like they lose a child. Some folks everybody kind of goes through their process, but then they rocket ship into something through, like you did. You start honoring this thing, and you start going, hey, look, let's get after it. And you get other folks that don't. Do you have any, like, what was the thing that prompted you to go the other way? Was it your wife that kept you in check? What were those things that made you go, or is that just time?
Yeah, I think it's just time. That's such a good question. I think I can't point to one thing specifically, but I just know I remember when I was a teenager and I first heard about like Tony Robbins, or you would hear about these different business people, or even when I was younger and like in 2008 with the recession and the crash and you just hear about these stories of other people where they went through something hard, but it was that springboard. Like they saw the opportunity in what at the time looked like a disaster. So I think that was just subconsciously planted in me. And then for me, like one of my biggest pet peeves, or I would say personality traits that just, it icks me out and I don't want to be around people like this, are people that don't have confidence and that allow things to just get them down or like label them. So I think part of that is, like I said, I had a good childhood, but we had, broken home and, a lot of instability there with my parents. And I think through that, I think my defense mechanism was, so I'll give you a personal example. We used to go up to my grandparents' house for like Thanksgiving and stuff, and I remember feeling like I had to put on a good face, like, right?
Yeah, everything's hunky-dory.
Oh, yeah. So at the time, right, like that's like painful to think about, but when you go through something like losing somebody and you have that skill set, even though it came from a not great place, being able to turn something crappy into something good, it's already kind of built into you, which is why I said don't let your shortcomings like keep you down. And so even with that, it's like, no, there has to be a way out of here. There has to be something. I'm not going to let this label me and define me. Now, that's not to say to not still, I think the other part of it is just not being very emotionally like receptive or like available. Like a part of me like shuts things down. So also at the same time, I also went through a grieving process and recognized that I don't want to just right away flip to like, I got to go on to the next thing and not deal with this, right? I went to therapy and that was awesome and like learned how to grieve and all that. So it's definitely a different process for everybody, but just, yeah, kind of finding the checks and balances in that and, and being able to move forward, but still giving it the respect and still finding your way to grieve and give it the healing that it needs.
Yeah. I like what you said, man. I think I've been personally studying this for quite some time. Literally talking to somebody this morning, man, before getting here on our way up here to the Richardson area about why the same thing can happen to somebody and it goes left or goes right. I think some of it has to be like exposure. Like if you are around, some of us get lucky and these people are in our lives or these stories are in our lives. And then for some folks, I think there's actually this reluctance to go seek, like you get something bad that happens to you. I hope somebody right now is like, something bad just happened. I hope nothing bad happened. But if it happened, I hope you're listening to this because I think you almost go, well, like there's an example of somebody who did something with something hard. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you catch these in small towns and stuff. Like there's a little bit of this, like everybody's just kind of soaking, like, oh, life sucks here, whatever. And you go, well, it's because like y'all just kind of continue to hang out with each other.
Yeah.
And part of it is like you kind of have to go fly a little bit. And I know it's scary because it feels bad at first because you go, oh man, I just met 3 people who were like actually worse situation than me and were like, they triumphed. But that's important because I think, and that's where I haven't fully locked in, but I'm wondering like exposure ends up becoming a bit of the cure.
It does. And I think a lot of it is also how you were brought up, right? Like, and if you never went through anything hard, it would depend on how your parents reacted to things, right? Because you are just such a sponge. One of my favorite quotes from Ed Milet is like, it's not what's taught, it's what's caught. Right? Like you can teach your kids all the things you want, but it's what are they seeing?
Yeah.
And so for me, it's also the kind of that parent voice where like when you hear something from your parents, it kind of goes numb, but then you have, a friend or someone's parents or something that you heard the same information that your parents are telling you, but from somewhere else, and then it clicks.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it too. It just depends on, did you get the right message at the right time and the right example that connected with you? And just great example is, I don't know if you ever heard of the story of the first person that ran the 4-minute mile.
Yes.
Right?
Love that story, man.
Right? It's just knowing, it's just seeing and hearing what's possible. And then it just, if you're open to it, it opens it up to you like, oh, well, if they can do that, I can do that.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big part for me with opening the business. Like that's a big part of it at first where you don't want to compare yourself to other people, but it's like, well, is that person smarter or better than me? Can I do it as well? And so to your point about finding sort of triumph in tragedy, yes, so many people have done it before. Like Thomas Edison, right? Failing on the light bulb 10,000 times, right? Yeah. It's just, the success is there. It's just, can you keep going and find it? Yeah.
So we talked to one, absolutely love the fact that you're one of our advisors and kind of helping us think through how to help these folks. I mean, it's just, again, I find that pros there's just this growth, there's this, they're not limited by, like, they don't believe helping somebody else is going to, like, diminish their success. So one, thanks for doing that and helping this next generation come through. But with that being said, one of the things that, as I've talked to folks, talked to several advisors, anywhere from 4 or 5 years into the seat all the way to these 40-year pros that have, are more, sitting at a more strategic level and kind of helping multiple businesses and things like that. The one thing that I find, they all say some version of this. The one thing that's consistent with all of them, they say, hey, Joseph, hey, JC, like, look, when you're bringing on and y'all are helping this next generation of owner-operators coming through, yeah, they got to have baseline business acumen. There's some things that, they for sure have to have. But more than anything else, if you can test for grit and character, like, can they just endure the suck? Then I think they got a chance for being successful. If there's a way you can test that, then I'll talk to them. And what's weird is that actually and as much as, as much as it makes me smile inside, it also makes me concerned because I recognize that's not what folks are prioritizing when they think about buying a business. It's kind of the ones and zeros and the spreadsheets. Talk to me about, like, I mean, you shared your story, but just, do you believe that's true too? That grit and character is really kind of it might be the most marquee thing of being a successful owner-operator?
Not even successful owner-operator, okay? Successful life. Like, nothing in your life that you are proud of came easily. If you and I were going to design and build the perfect human being that was resilient, that was kind, that was confident, that was the leader, that would walk into the room and light it up, we take all those great attributes. We would not give them an easy life. Why? What do we see with, heirs to fortunes? What do we see to lottery winners that don't know how to deal with money and we're just giving it? Yeah. Most of the time, it goes away and gets squandered, right? Because they didn't earn it. So, yes, the obstacle is the way. The challenge is the way, right? If you ask you pray to God for things, He's not going to give it to you. He's going to give you the way to it, the way through it, which is always through grit. And in today's age, it's so easy to just be soft and just accept. You have to do things like physically challenge your body on purpose to find some sort of challenge. If you want to, you can sit on your couch, and as our founder Bedros would say, let your belly button fill up with Cheeto dust, right? You can order food to your house. Yeah. You can work from home. You can, watch pornography. You can watch anything you want on TV. You don't have to move from your couch, and you can live a life. So you have to seek out more and more ways to make it tough, because what we're seeing across the board is the softer that we become as a society, things don't get better, right? We need people that can do hard things, and there's no training for that. And again, to my point before, if you had a tough childhood, good. Use that. Use that angst and that chip on your shoulder to go out there and get after it. Because the way to dominate today, it is so easy.
Oh, you're saying that the field is soft, you just kick them down.
Starting in 2020, when the world changed, that was a thinning of the herd. Businesses shut down because they couldn't. Now, some of it was you can't open up on all that. But if you were steadfast in we saw it at Fit Body Boot Camp. We lost almost 50% of our locations.
Really?
Okay? Yes. Now,
smokes, man.
It was terrible, right?
Yeah.
But the folks like me who were had a good business, were dead set, would do anything that it took. I was live on camera every day at noon in our Facebook group the day we were shut down. I had to save this freaking thing. I didn't get a break on my rent. I didn't get a break on my royalties from HQ. There was no breaks coming. So it's like, hey, we're either going to go all in and save this thing, or we're going to go down in a blaze of glory. There's no other option.
Yeah.
Whereas we had other businesses, Fit Bodies, whatever it may be, that they played the sit and wait game. Oh, government's gonna come and save me, right? And then if they shut down too early, and if they would have just hung on and just went through and stayed open, they could have then had access to the money that came later with EIDL and things like that. But the grit it's just that intangible. And when you meet somebody that is confident, passionate, successful, whatever that means to you, they didn't get there. The man at the top of the mountain didn't fall there, right? So yes. So that is my mission in life, is to help people see that, recognize it, not be afraid of that. Now, it doesn't mean you need to be 24/7. I wake up at 5 a.m. and I work out, and it's 7 days a week, and I don't eat this, and I say no to that. That's unrealistic. But you have to find those ways within yourself to find those challenges, because if you're gonna open a business, okay? If you want everybody to like you, go sell some ice cream, all right?
Yeah.
If you want an easy life, sit on your couch and order DoorDash. That's cool, whatever. Again, when you're 80, are you gonna call it a life well lived? That's up to you, right? If it's me, no way. So yeah, you gotta have that grit, and the only way to experience it is to go through hard things. I teach my kid this, and the kids on the soccer team. We were talking about being brave the other day and being confident. And it's funny. I said, what do you have to be first before you're brave? And the answer is you have to be afraid first.
That's
right?
a weird thing, right? Oh, I love this topic, man.
Right?
Yeah, like bravery and courage. People think it's predicated from some kind of
No, you got to be afraid and then go do the thing. How do you build confidence? you got to do something that you're not confident in, that you're afraid of, that you're not good at yet. And then you're like, oh, wow, I learned this thing. I built the confidence. I built the credibility. And it snowballs. So finding ways to never stop doing that, because, again, it's getting harder and harder to find ways to challenge yourself. Because if you don't, and the S hits the fan, which is,
that's a synonym with running a business.
come on, dude. There's the one guarantee in running a business is stuff's not going to go your way. And so how are you going to react to that? Are you going to fold and crumble? And when that happens, if and when you do fold and crumble, or you emotionally react instead of intelligently respond, what message is going to send to your team members, to your clients, to your partners, so that though we got to walk on eggshells around JC, we can't bring him bad news. Oh, I wanted to request time off, right? And then that is just going to snowball and spiral in the opposite direction. Whereas, dang, I'm getting married, or I had something happen at home, or I got a dentist appointment, or this happened. Man, if I go to him, he's going to help me out. He's going to be, understanding and be like, oh, no big deal. Back to your question before about like how you find that grit. I know for me, it didn't happen so much when I was a kid, but I had a few mentors that I didn't know were mentors at the time, where I saw them. One was a parent's dad, and the other one was someone that I worked for. When stuff happened and it was bad news, the way that they were cool, calm, and collected.
Yeah, man, it's the
dude,
best.
I didn't even know that was an option. I thought it was go, flip
Chicken
out.
head cut off, go.
Oh, go, or yell at the person, or get aggressive, or what. I'm like, oh, you can just be nice and kind and understanding, and like, oh, that's no big deal. Yeah. So I think that's part of that too, when you can get that exposure from somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a skill in its own. It's this we used to call it like command presence.
Yes.
Like, do you have that ability to just stay calm, cool, and collective into the storm? And it's not about bravado or making you feel like you're a tough guy. It's actually about just establishing calm mind amongst your team, who's actually going to figure out the solution.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just giving them the space to go. It's probably like a little bit like when a little kid hits themselves and they kind of look at mom and dad, and you go like, and they're like, okay, I guess I'm not crying, versus, oh crap, and they go, okay, maybe I need to just let loose. It's the same concept.
Same concept, right? We're all a slave to our habits and our rituals. But as you get old, a lot of that gets built in when we're kids, and we could talk all day about belief system and how it leads to your thoughts and it leads to your actions, and everything in your life is simply a culmination of your thoughts and your belief system. But yeah, it's learning how to change your habits and your thoughts, because it's all you have control over. And it is a 24/7 job, but once you master that, the world just becomes unlocked to you. But you have to be conscious of it and not just be a zombie and just, take life for what it is. I think one thing that I figured out, and this was probably a downside thing. This has got me in a lot of trouble when I was a kid. But when I realized at some point, and I looked around and I'm like, all this stuff is just made up. Everything, our laws, our society, how you're supposed, it's all just made up. And when I'd walk into a business when I started getting older, I'm like, some guy just had the idea. Is he any smarter or better than me? He just went for it. And everyone, if you have enough confidence, everyone just kind of go along with you for a little while, right?
It's a true
And
thing.
so that's just part of it too, is like, at the end of the day, friends, like, life is just made up, and you can have anything you want. You just got to know what you want, which I think is a great thing to talk about too, even as you talked about staying calm and in that command presence.
Yeah, command presence.
The reason you're able to do that is because you're not freaking out about the thing, because you're focused on the vision and the mission. So what's your vision and mission for life? When you know that, like, here's the thing we're working towards. So anything goes wrong, it's like, okay, how do we fix it? Automatically puts you in a solution mindset.
Yeah.
So that we can keep moving forward towards the mission, which is so important for business and life, is having your vision for what you want, and then your core values, which are aligned with that. And that's the secret to success.
Yeah, nobody, I think for folks that maybe even need a further kind of thought process or something, I know the racing scene, especially F1, has taken, the world by storm, especially the U.S. And maybe the world has already known about it, but the U.S. But the one thing that I find fascinating, if you ever if you kind of listen in to the pit radios and then their command center, anytime a tire goes out, fuel's low, wing got crashed, they're focused on winning a race. And that's the only thing they're focused on. So they're immediately coming up with solutions. They're like, all right, bring it in early. Let's put some other tires on. You know what? Keep running. I think we got enough fuel. They're not freaking out and saying, well, this thing is just lost, right? And I think it's one of those things when you think about where you can kind of put your mind and how it is that you can kind of continue to stay up there, it takes a lot of discipline and focus. I think it's actually probably a good reason why we were talking about it earlier as we were kind of walking through your HQ here, about I think fitness these are these really kind of simple disciplines that you build. How do you think about being a good business owner? I know you're biased because you're also in the fitness business, but just assume you're running, I don't know, a plumbing company or a CPA firm or whatever it might be. Fitness being like a basic discipline to kind of help establish that calm. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. Like it's again, you got to find ways to challenge yourself. If you can start your day or add into any time of your day something that physically challenges you, mentally challenges you, showing up when no one's expecting you to show up, building that credibility with yourself, right? Challenging you when no one else is looking, right? Creating your own. It's just going to make your day easier and everything else just seem simpler. Plus all the physical benefits of releasing the dopamine and all those good feelings and being an antidepressant and literally all of the healing everything that's wrong with, every commercial that you see on for a pill can be solved with nutrition and exercise, right? So that's the first piece of it. And then, the other piece of it is when it comes to being a leader, when we're talking about being an operator, whether you're a one-man show or you have a huge team, you have one client or you have 1 million clients, your job is to be a leader. You're a leadership in your own life and then to the people that depend on you. At first we think all the X's and O's and okay, got to make the money. Leadership, number one. Leadership is always the problem and leadership is always the solution, always. And that comes down to communication and expectations and how you're setting all those things. And so if you see someone who is put together, physically fit, what kind of attributes do you just know that they have? They're disciplined, they're credible, they work hard, they care about their vessel and something that belongs to them. So would you then believe that they probably, do the same thing for their business and their team members and their company and their clients? Probably yes. Versus if you're not there and you're not taking care of this vessel, and I'm not saying you need to have a six-pack and be ready to step on stage, right? But are you taking care of your mental and physical faculties? Because it's so easy to forget that every single thing that we put into our mouth, it all goes up here to this brain, and we need this brain to function properly.
Yeah.
So if you're tired and you're grumpy and you didn't sleep well and you missed your workout and your food's not on point, it's going to affect everything that you do. And the people in your family, okay, and the people that are your friends, listen, they love you, but they can love you to death, literally.
Oh yeah, and we're gonna go out for cocktails again.
You
week.
deserve it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's your birthday. Listen, friends, you're not 5 years old.
Yeah.
You don't deserve a cookie because you had a hard day, right? I mean, let's be real.
That's so funny, man.
It's true though. I hear it all the time. Oh, you deserve nothing in life.
Yeah.
Get what you want, do what you want, make decisions because you're like gonna feel good, but not because you deserve something. That's such a cop out. So yeah, physical fitness or just anything that's gonna make you better and make you credible, people see it, they feel it. And they won't say the opposite. They won't tell you that you're getting a little fat. They won't tell you that you're a little sloppy and lazy. They're gonna accept that, and with business, with life, it's a big thought here, but you're always gonna rise or fall to the level of the people that you're around. So if you're the leader and you got Cheeto dust in your belly button, right? And you're showing up a little late, your team members they're gonna always be right here below you. So they're gonna be doing
packed with Cheeto in that belly button. Yeah.
Packing it in there. Whereas if you're showing up early and you got high energy, you're gonna attract the right people. Same thing with your friends and the people that you spend your time with. And listen, as you get into this world of entrepreneurship, operator, I promise you, without a shadow of a doubt, there's people in your life you're gonna need to edit or eliminate your relationships with. It's gonna happen. It might be your mom. It might be someone that you love, and they plant those little seeds of, oh, honey, that sounds really risky. Oh, honey, I don't know if that's a good thing. Oh, I would never do that. Well, your dad and I, we were always real frugal with our money. You should just go work that 9 to 5 and keep those health benefits and put that money in that 401k so when you're 70, you can be safe. You can do that, but if that's not what's in your heart, and something's calling you, and you don't want to live a life of regret, then you're gonna say thanks. Appreciate it, Mom. Love you. I'll call you next week.
Yeah.
Or move the conversation onto something else. Or I know friends that have had to literally cut out people in their life because you don't realize when someone has that control over you, especially with parents, the trauma that causes and how that just bleeds into your belief system. And you can't afford to have those beliefs. It's just going to hold you back.
How do you talk about edit and deleting or eliminating? What about the add function? You had mentioned something about, hey, look, if you're going to perform at this level, I actually just give you the example you gave me earlier. You said, it's no surprise to me that the top performing locations all show up to this meeting. Like the folks that do not technically on paper need coaching always have it. They always have a community. They always have a support system. They have other people they're trying to get better with. And the ones that are failing never seem to show up.
Right.
What is that?
This is called human nature. And this is called, because I have this really interesting perspective that I'm so grateful for, where as a coach here at my gym with people trying to lose weight, with my team members over the years, with the folks that I coach at our HQ and all of our owners across the board. It goes back, again, it sounds cheesy, but to their belief in what they think they're worthy of in their life. And so what we find is, what I call it the 33% rule. I just made it up, but what I have seen is there's about 33% of people that will be at the top. It's probably less than that, but I'll be generous. We're like, they're gonna be in that top percent. They're gonna lose the weight and keep it off. They're gonna be successful in their business. They're gonna be the guy or the gal that you're like, wow, they have it together, and they're gonna create the vision for their life and work towards it and have their core values and like work out and do all the things. And they're gonna work on that mindset and just know that there's more and more, and they're gonna go out and get after it. You have this middle 30-ish% that's just gonna be average. They're gonna do better, they're gonna do worse, they're gonna lose the weight, they're gonna gain it back, they're gonna have the gym membership and show up and work out, but they're not gonna be the one in the room setting the room on fire. They're just gonna be kind of in the mix, right? In a business sense, they're gonna be they're gonna be your middle ground people. Like, they do okay and they make the money and they have the family. Like, okay, cool, but it's not like wow. And then you have your bottom 30%. No matter what you try to do to help them, they're not going to see progress. They're not going to lose the weight. They're going to close the business. They're going to have the next failed thing. They're going to have the failed relationship, the failed marriage, all of the things. And what that all boils down to, again, it's all about mindset. So to your point, you got to get around people that have those bigger ideas and have been there. And believe in them, believe that they're not an overnight success, and follow the doggone blueprint of success, right? If you're a millionaire and you get around billionaires, you feel like you're broke, but you better listen to if you're trying to get there, listen to what the billionaire has to say. His problems are way different than yours. They're way bigger than yours, and they're different, right? Same thing with if you're just getting started in being an operator. Connect with people that have been there and done that. There's no ego. Like, your ego is not your amigo, right? It's not.
Yeah, they're not bringing you salsa for your taco there. Go enjoy a breakfast in the morning.
Go be part of the mastermind group. Go get around people that have, just like back to the 4-minute mile, right? Nobody thought it was possible. They thought the guy his heart was going to explode. And son of a gun, he did it. And then within like 6 weeks,
got broke again.
There was so many more people that did it because they're like, oh, this is possible. Yeah. So it's just such a powerful lesson that, you got to get around other people. Entrepreneurship can feel like you're on an island because, again, your family and your friends, they're not going to understand it. They're working their 9 to 5s. They have security. They have those golden handcuffs of a salary and a 401k. You don't have that. They're not going to understand. They're going to want you to go out on the weekends. They're going to tell you to take it easy. They're going to say that you're working too hard. They're going to love you to death, either the death of your business or your body, all of it. So you got to get around those other people. I know for me, my best friends in life, it's not my guys from high school.
Yeah.
It's my fellow Fit Body guys that I've connected with over the years, because we're able to talk about revenue and money and finances and team stuff that I can't share that always with my parents or people that it's two different worlds, and they just wouldn't understand it. It's no fault of their own, but that's the path that I chose. And you got to get around other people, or even connecting with folks like you that you're talking the same talk, because we know you're simply the sum of the 5 to 10 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
I guarantee, count your 5 friends right now. I bet you have the same level of financial success, in your business life. Your marriage is about the same as theirs. You're still telling the same stories, right? One of the lowest, as Tony Soprano said, one of the lowest forms of conversation is, hey, you remember when? Like, stop having those yeah, we remember when. And that was 25 years ago in high school. You were 18 years old.
Yeah. And that's great. You almost made it to state, whatever.
Yeah, rock and roll, dude, right?
Don't do that, yeah.
So definitely, like, you need people around. You got to seek it out. And social media is a great place for it. Just be mindful with who you're following, because their job, these influencer stuff, they're trying to market and sell to you to, like, here's the one thing you need to do to go from 10 to 20 million dollars. Here's the one. There's no one thing.
No,
it's everything. And get your, treat your life like you're your board of advisors or your board of directors. Like, can you take every once in a while, take that 30,000-foot view and just look at your life and be like, hey, where are we getting this information from? Is that credible? Are we moving in the right direction?
Yeah, no, I think that's dead on. I think that is it doesn't seem like the unlock. It doesn't seem, it actually seems easier to just say, I'm special. Nobody else really understands what I'm talking about here, and kind of just being this Lone Ranger, as you had mentioned. But I do think you'll find that there's so many folks and they want to help. What's really incredible about it, the pros, the ones who've done the work, I don't know, they like seeing that. They also just love seeing that fire in others and the younger generation coming up. They kind of want to not see the craft of that die. It's probably very similar to what a pro athlete feels like. Kobe talks a lot about, brainstorming with Jordan on the court, right? And it's like, if you want to be great, these are the people you need to talk to. And great in whatever facet you're in, but specifically in this sport called business. It's one of those things that I don't know that gets valued enough. Speaking of sports, speaking of teams, and speaking of business, you and your wife run this thing.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, how do you do it in such a, like, most people would see that as a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And y'all figured out, we got to meet her she's awesome. How does that work well?
Yeah.
What would you give advice on?
And I've seen both. I've seen the disaster and I've seen the incredible success.
Yeah.
Not in my life, but just in other examples of other folks that I know.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, my wife is bar none, without a doubt, the reason that we are where we are. What I have found to be true, again, kind of hindsight is 20/20, but as I look at her and I look at other successful businesses, we follow a system here called EOS. And in EOS, you have an accountability chart, and there's a position called the visionary, and there's one called the integrator. You could also think of this as, the CEO and then the director of operations. So the reason we work so well together is I'm what we call a parrot. We also do these personality profiles. So I'm more of a parrot eagle, meaning like I'm passionate, I'm loud, I like to be around people, I'm very direct, I want to get stuff done, and I have a big vision. So I'm the here's what I want to go do person. Prime example was like filling out the expression of interest for Fit Body people. Like, hey babe, I think I want to do this. Her mode of operation is, how are we going to do it? Right? Yeah. So her background is she's actually a program manager. She has an MBA. So she was always very much, she's a checklist person, right? The weekend, it's not like she's like, hey, babe, what do you want to do? I don't know, watch a little football, go golfing, right? She's like, well, I got to do this and the laundry and then we have Bennett's thing and soccer and I have his lunches packed for next week, right? So you want to use that to your advantage. And what I have found in every successful business, you have those two people. You have the big idea person, and then you have the executor. So those are our natural tendencies. When I started the gym, she still had her job as a program manager. So what was happening was I was coming home every night with all these grand ideas and puking information on her about all this stuff, and I think I want to do this and this and that. And then so when she joined about 2 years into it, that's when we started getting stuff written down. and
Coming up with SOPs.
SOPs and processes and training people. So that's how we work. That's the X's and O's of like in the business and our roles. And then I'd say above that is like, it's made our relationship so much stronger. We had to learn a lot throughout the years of like what to keep at home and what to keep at business. But really now it's all we talk about. It is our life. So I'd say that's the other piece of it is like in a 9 to 5, I think it's easier to like, leave it at work. But when you're in this, like you got to be all in if you want it to be this big thing.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of it is like, we are so aligned on our vision for our life that it's okay when she needs to make a text message or send the email or I need to do this and hey, take care of Ben and I need to go make a phone call. Like there's that understanding. So it's a beautiful situation.
Was that something like in the, or even now, did you all kind of lay out some kind of ground rules and principles about how, like, do you have an SOP between each other where, where in a way that you don't, let me back up here. I think where I see a lot of cliffs that people are going to drive off with their significant other is when they think that this endeavor of doing it together is just a way to hang out more.
Ooh.
That sounds like not a good idea. If that's your only reason why you're doing this.
Bad idea. It'd be like having a baby to save your relationship.
Yeah. It's going to tie us together.
Good luck, right? Yeah. So, of course, you want to have with any partnership, even if it's your business partner, like you need to have a good understanding and relationship of who that person is and what their strengths are and where their shortcomings are so that, even in our personal and professional, like she's a dove. So she's a lot more caring and concerning and I'm just not. It's just not in my DNA. So learning not to try to change the other person, but learning about each other and then knowing how to flex, right? You want to turn into a chameleon as a leader where you're able to flex to everybody else and like understand their needs. So now when she comes to me, I try to listen more, but I always want to go right for the solution where she needs to talk it out. I think a lot of women are that way, right? And a lot of dynamics are that way in relationships and marriages. So just learning that and understanding that, because the key to changing anything is first having the awareness of it. So it's going to put a magnifying glass on your relationship without a doubt. Can you turn that what could be something negative into something positive, or just having the understanding of it? So to answer your question, for us, SOPs, not so much, but we just have a good understanding and it's evolved over time. So one thing that we do now is every week on Thursday, we have a standing life meeting. And we run it just like we run our team meetings here, where we literally go through these different sections of our meeting. It's called an L10 meeting. And so just to make sure we're on the same page.
You and her?
Yeah.
Oh man, killer.
Every week, I would encourage that to everybody in life.
You don't mind, like, just give me just a quick, like, what's that format look like?
Yeah, sure thing. So we start off talking about, we just have different sections. Like we have like the plan for the year. So we have like our big goals for the year. So
personal and professional? Or mainly professional?
It's a mix, but mostly personal.
Okay.
So for us, it was like I want to go to Colorado and go hunting here in a couple weeks, and so that was been on the list. There was also a couple vacations that we had on there, and just things that we want to accomplish, because we know if we don't run them down, life's going to get it. So we have those up there, and then we move into just things that are coming up. Like literally it says weekend plan for the weekend, and throughout the week you just plug stuff in there. And now that we have our son's in kindergarten, she's on the PTA. I'm coaching soccer, so like, hey, I got this thing next Thursday, and she's in this mom's club in the neighborhood. So just going through that and making sure that we both have our calendars pulled up. We're plugging things on the calendar to make sure they're on there. And then there's a business piece of it too, with as team members are out or we need to fill in, or next week my son's on fall break, so we needed to have that on the calendar for a while. Like, what are we going to do for a week when he's out of school? So yeah, I would encourage that to anybody, because as you have kids. And the thing that I think about too is we're lucky that we work together. Some people are like, oh, it must be so much you're like, it's your whole life. But what's the opposite? What if you both work 9 to 5s and your lives are so separated for 40 hours a week? You're totally doing 2 totally different things. Then you're relying on the little bit of time in the evenings and that little bit of time on the weekend to like get your life together. So I would just encourage you, especially if you don't work together, it's even more important to make sure you have an understanding, because you're working all day long somewhere else. How are you supposed to understand what's truly going on in the other person's life all day long at work? She might come home and say, oh, well, Karen in the meeting and this and that. dinner might not be enough time to go over that. Like
Yeah.
what's really going on and spending that quality time together.
Yeah, no, I think that's just sage advice for relationships, like you said, even business partnerships and whatever it might be, is actually dedicating time to syncing up that communication. I think so many folks exist in life with this. It's like this passive kind of way of existing. And a good example is, husband gets home and goes like, and it's Saturday and starts getting ready to do a thing and going like, well, what are you doing? And like, well, we're going to go do this thing. Do we talk about that?
Right.
Like, no, because my plan was to do this. And now that weekend's just started off wrong, right? As opposed to being very clear about where you're at.
And that's the same with a business lesson of, right, expectations and communication solve everything, right? The problem there was it wasn't communicating. There was no or there's two different expectations.
That's
right. Unexpressed expectations just lead to future complications.
Yeah.
Right. Like literally everything in your life that you're frustrated about, it's because the expectation wasn't set and the communication wasn't there. Whether it was just something with yourself or it was something with someone else, that's the key. So you can, as a leader, good business lesson, you can never over communicate. You can never overemphasize your expectations, because especially as you go on over time, you're going to get so used to your business and the way things are going on, you're going to forget. It happens to us here. We have to remind ourselves. We got new people walking in the door every day. We've been doing this 8 years. Of course, we know how our workouts go and that we lost the weight, right? They don't know that we start off the workout with 2 claps, and at the end we're going to ask them to share their experience, and then what it looks like when we do our membership, presentation to them and how to sign up with us and everything that's included. It's like in business, you got to learn to continue to say old things to new people, but don't forget to say the old things. Don't expect just because you've been here and this feels like your second home that it's going to be the same for everybody else.
Yeah, that's dead on. It reminds me of some coaching and some insight that we give to kind of what I would consider more of the white collar, more professional kind of up and coming owner that's like maybe worked on Wall Street for a little while, or one of the bigger corporate companies, now wants to kind of go back and run a HVAC company. And talk about over communicating. In addition to communicating operationally and what's going on, old lessons and stuff, some of the best things you can also communicate to your team is, especially early on, hey team, look, I'm not as expert in this as you all are. So I really need y'all help to catch me up. My job is to make sure that like you have the time and the resources and things to be successful. I want to see us all win. It's such a weird thing. Most folks come into that environment and they kind of either want to act like they know as much or want to just hopefully hide out so that no one, and there's nothing more disarming than going, I respect you because I don't know this.
Yeah.
That also is communicating.
Yeah. Again, your ego.
Yeah.
He's not your amigo, right?
Yeah.
So be vulnerable, right? How do you connect with someone? When they're vulnerable and real and you have something that, if you come in on your high horse, like you know everything, no one's going to be able to relate to you, right? We all have shortcomings. We all have blind sides that we don't see. But when you can see them and say, right, like you said, the way to disarm somebody is just, hey, like if you're going to have a tough conversation, guess what you're going to say? Hey, man, this is going to be a tough conversation. Now they're ready for it, right?
Yeah, okay, Roger.
Or why does the doctor tell someone to sit down before he gives them bad news? Because you got to prep them for it, right? Or like, hey, or if you want to negotiate with someone, like, hey, man, now this might sound crazy. You might not be on board with this, but here's what I'm thinking. And then they're like, you're already taking that barrier away. So communication is just, it's everything. And again, setting those expectations, because you're right. And think about that for a team in that example that has been working there 10 years. Their biggest fear and probably their subconscious expectations as a new guy coming in is going to be, who knows what story they made up in their head.
Oh, it's way worse than probably what's going to happen. Maybe not, but
we all do it. We all do it, right? Because it just comes from that nervousness and that newness of like walking into a new environment, whatever it's going to be. I think about that with our members when they walk in the door here they have this like horror story in their head because of something that happened in the past. So how much can I show them ahead of time with like, here's what the place looks like. Here's a video of what it's going to be like when you come in the door. Here's examples of our members to just to alleviate that and be as open and vulnerable as possible. So yeah, if you're someone that's coming in and taking over an existing operation, come in there with that humility and not knowing what you don't know, empower other people, and that's the way to build relationships and to continue to grow the business. Because if those things aren't communicated and you do come in like you know everything, those people are going to quit and bounce, because they're all, nobody, one of the human hierarchy of needs is one is stability, but another one is change.
Yeah.
Right? So like people don't like change, but they're okay with it if they know where they're going. And that goes back to that casting that vision of, hey guys, here's where we're going. Here's why we're all on this mission together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said, Tom. Look, I know we're coming up on time, and I could talk to you for 4 more hours. Maybe at one point we'll go long form on this thing and go 7 hours on this, but just kind of leaving folks with anything top of mind for you about those that are considering right now this life of owning and operating a business and really kind of going off on their own and doing it. Any things you'd say, hey, if I could tell Tom 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like spend some more time being more thoughtful and intentional about X, what would that be? Just to kind of help them prep as they start to pursue this endeavor.
That is just such a good question. And the problem with the question, it's a great question, I'm going to answer it, is that whatever I'm about to tell you, you're not going to be able to get it and utilize it until you go through it.
Go through it.
Right? It's again, the obstacle is the way. So what are things to focus on? It's you. It's your personal development. It is you reading the books, because there's different stages. You're going to be the stage of just collecting the information. And information is good, but wisdom only comes from actually being able to use the information, right? So notice who you're following on your social media. Read the books. If there's one book that is my absolute favorite, I just got done listening to it for probably the 10th time. It's called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. If you want a blueprint for life and how to be successful and the things to avoid, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. So fill your mind up with those things. And then again, act as your board of directors. When you are so owning a business is going to put you under a magnifying glass. It's like having a gazillion dollars or drinking alcohol. It might bring out the best in you, might bring out the scary side of you. So when you're under stress, who are you, right? And then who are you when nobody is looking? That you have to have that credibility in yourself, because people are going to give you the sniff test, the smell test. It's going to come through. The real version is going to come through. And you might not feel great about it. It might not be pretty. That's okay. Awareness is the first step. And then the vulnerability piece of it. I had to learn that, right? Because when you come in, you feel like the weight is on your shoulders. Like you got to make this thing work.
Yeah.
Part of that is true. But then, the more vulnerable you can be and just recognizing your strength and your weaknesses, because in any business, you're going to have to build a team. You're going to have to bring people in that can make up where you lack so that you can focus on your zone of genius. Because if you are not focused there and you're trying to do everything else, you're going to get burned out. You're going to be doing stuff that doesn't fuel you up, and it's not going to serve you, your team, your business, your customers. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but to wrap it up, I'd say your self-development, physically and mentally, right? And even if it means you need to borrow that confidence or borrow that alter ego from someone else, something that we teach our coaches to do if they're a little nervous about getting on the mic in front of people is get an alter ego. We had a coach, her alter ego was Sasha Fierce, who is Beyonce's. Beyonce has an alter ego called Sasha Fierce for when she goes out on stage. Right? So do you need an alter ego? Do you need to be like, okay, for me, when I first learned about our bird profiles I had 2. It was going to be Steve Jobs and Mr. Rogers. Because I wasn't as serious as I needed to be for business stuff.
Yeah.
So I would literally walk in and be like, okay, what would Steve Jobs think and say? And then I need to be more compassionate. So I thought Mr. Rogers. So maybe you need to borrow that from somewhere in your life and fake it till you make it in that sense.
What's the test that you take on the bird stuff? Do you know?
Okay, great nugget for you. It is called Taking Flight with DISC. So It's a DISC personality test.
Yeah.
But instead of DISC, there's 4 birds. Eagle, parrot, owl, and dove. We use it all across the brand. It's just way stickier. You take the test, they give you this book. You read this one page of your profile. It describes you to a T. And then it's a great way to be able to speak the same language for you, for your clients, for your team members, and understand how people operate. Game changer.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
And this is pretty quick assessment?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
10 minutes. It's like 37 questions or something. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I dig it,
Taking
man.
Flight with Disc, amazing company. We've had the chance to work intimately with them, and they've been really great. It's really, really big.
Yeah. Tom, thank you so much, man. I could, again, talk to you for days, and I think what you're doing here, not only changing the lives of the folks coming in, that you're members, and just, I just see it. You can feel it. You can see all the impact that you're making on arguably one of the hardest things for folks in America to get over, which is their physical, health, which then leads into their mental health there. But also just what you're doing to give back to, like, this conversation is going to help so many folks. Either, our hope always is to either rattle you into a way that gets you thinking on straight, also discourage folks. There's some folks that shouldn't go down this path.
Oh, yeah.
And everything in between. So thanks always for what you're doing, man.
Pleasure.
We're going to be stoked to continue to work with you, and we'll be back up here in Richardson to go get a class on.
Sounds good.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the American Operator Podcast, where we celebrate the backbone of America, small business owners and operators like you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss out on more of these stories and insights from people who keep our community strong. Until next time, keep building, keep operating, and keep America moving forward.